In Japan, there's a system that's supposed to be a fundamental social safety net, one that guarantees a decent life for everyone. But what happens when that very system becomes the flashpoint for a bitter conflict, pitting the poor against the poor? That's the welfare war we're diving into today.
Working honestly is foolish. Just let that sink in. This one phrase really gets to the heart of the whole issue. It's a sentiment you hear more and more from low-wage workers in Japan, and it captures this really bizarre paradox. I mean, why would working hard feel like a dumb decision? Let's unpack that. And right here, you can see the two sides of the coin. On one side, you have the working poor. They're putting in long hours, their wages aren't going anywhere, and they're paying taxes. And on the other side, welfare recipients, who are supported by those very taxes. You can just imagine how this perceived imbalance is fueling some really deep resentment.
Now, to really get what's going on, you have to understand the system itself. It's called Seikatsu Hogo, and it's actually rooted in Japan's constitution. The goal is pretty noble. Make sure that no citizen falls below a basic standard of living, covering things like housing, medical care, all the essentials. But as you're about to see, the reality is way more complicated.
Yeah, this system is getting squeezed from every direction. First off, there's a huge social stigma, which means a lot of people who genuinely need help are just too ashamed or scared to even apply. Then, the application process itself is famously notoriously difficult. And on top of all that, anytime a single case of welfare fraud makes the news, it just triggers this massive public outrage that poisons the entire conversation. And that brings us to a huge driver of all this anger, something called the inversion phenomenon. This is the truly shocking situation where the amount of money you can get from welfare benefits can actually be more than the take-home pay from a low-wage job. I mean, just imagine how unfair that feels. You're working your tail off, day in and day out, but someone who isn't working is getting more financial support. But you know, this feeling of unfairness is just one piece of a much bigger economic story. To really understand where this rage is coming from, we have to look way beyond the welfare system. And this part is absolutely key. This isn't just a problem for the so-called working poor. This financial hardship is spreading. A massive number of Japanese workers across all kinds of different jobs are feeling the squeeze and having to cut back. And here's exactly why. Just look at this gap. The prices for everyday stuff are going up and up and up. But wage growth, it's basically flat. What that means is every single year, people's paychecks are buying them less and less. And here's the cold, hard data to prove it. For the third year in a row, real wages, that's what your money can actually buy, have gone down. This isn't just a feeling people have, it's a mathematical fact. Honest workers in Japan are literally getting poorer every year, no matter how hard they work. Now, all of this economic pain has to go somewhere. And unfortunately, it's being channeled into this really toxic kind of social hostility, what you might call the art of malicious nitpicking. And this is the justification you hear all the time. The argument basically goes that people aren't on welfare because of big systemic problems. No, it's because they're personally irresponsible, that they just don't know how to manage a budget. And this kind of belief leads to some truly unbelievable behavior. Online, you have people scrutinizing a welfare recipient's grocery receipt, attacking them for buying a single can of beer. They'll zoom in on the reflection in a selfie, trying to see if that's a new smartphone. And this nastiness even spills into the real world, where the children of welfare recipients get bullied in school. This level of hostility, right? This microscopic focus on a can of beer or the reflection in a photo, it just begs a huge question. With all this economic frustration in the air, who is the real target of all this anger? Let's follow the trail. So the anger is being pointed downwards at the most visible and vulnerable group out there, welfare recipients. They've become this super convenient target, an easy scapegoat for a problem that feels way too big and complicated to deal with head-on. But what this really is a classic case of misdirection. All that anger gets deflected away from the real sources of the frustration, the corporations that have built this low-wage economy and the government policies that have failed to protect workers and help wages grow. Those are the powerful players being let off the hook. Which brings us right to the core of the problem. It isn't the individual on welfare. The problem is systemic. It's structural. Japan's entire low-wage economic structure is failing to provide a decent living, even for the people who play by all the rules and work as hard as they possibly can. And, this isn't just a Japanese problem. It really touches on a fundamental question that countries all over the world are struggling with right now. What does a truly fair social safety net actually look like? So, I really want to put this question to all of you watching from around the world. Does any of this sound familiar? Do you see a similar kind of conflict where you live, where low-wage workers and people getting public assistance are basically pitted against each other?
Because this is the fundamental dilemma, isn't it? How do you possibly design a system that holds up to two really core principles of justice? One, the right for every single person to survive, and two, the idea that honest, hard work should be fairly rewarded. How do you balance those when they seem to be fighting each other? So, what's a potential way forward? Well, the analysis suggests two critical first steps to start rebuilding trust. Number one, vigorously crack down on the actual fraud that poisons public perception and gives the critics all their ammunition. And number two, be radically transparent about how every single bit of tax money is used. Without that, public trust is just impossible.
In the end, it really all boils down to this clash between two ideas that people hold very deeply. On one hand, you have the belief that everyone has a right to be helped when they need it. But on the other, you have this powerful conviction that hard work must be rewarded. The whole social fabric starts to tear when that second principle feels like it's being completely ignored. And this might be the single most important takeaway from all of this. The anger from the working poor isn't just simple cruelty or jealousy. It really should be heard as a desperate, frustrated cry for help. It's the sound of people realizing that their hard work, their honesty, their daily grind is not being valued by the very society they're helping to build. So, we'll leave you with this last thought. If we're going to solve this, it means we have to stop pitting the poor against each other and finally start confronting the bigger structural problems at play. So what do you think is the key? What's the most crucial ingredient for a system that can provide real security without taking away the motivation to work? We would love to hear your thoughts.